New York port of embarkation has been helping to keep England in the war by sending food and munitions. Now, hundreds of outgoing ships are packed with American men ready to take the fight to the enemy. But the enemy is already at America's door. For months, Hitler's U-boats have been terrorizing the Atlantic seaboard. In 1942 alone, U-boats sink over 1,000 ships bound for England and the Soviet Union. So when Charles Scheffel and the troops ship out, they must do so under the cover of darkness. There is no fanfare, no throngs of waving loved ones. America is sneaking off to war.
Our lifeboats can only hold 2,500 men. So if we're hit, the rest of us will just jump into the Atlantic.
When I got into the Army, I guess I never figured on going to sea. It's a huge convoy, and we have battleships and destroyers escorting us, zigging and zagging to keep the U-boats from picking up our trail. Now I wish I had learned how to swim.
They are the first American ground troops dispatched to fight Hitler. Part of a gigantic amphibious force of 100,000 men and 120 vessels of all kinds departing simultaneously from ports in both America and Britain. Sailing out of Liverpool, England, is Second Lieutenant and former college basketball player Charles Scheffel. After surviving his transatlantic journey, he had spent 3 months training with the British in the UK.
Everyone's guessing about our destination. You know, soldiers will gamble on anything. So we form a pool and we start betting. I'm thinking Norway. But after 3 days of sailing,
I went to see the brigadier. I said, "Sir, my men are down here in this hole. They've been on deck for 3 days. I've got to know what's happening." He said, "We're going to make the invasion of North Africa."
For over 2 years, Hitler's troops have been battling the British in North Africa, struggling for control of the Suez Canal. If the Germans can take the canal, they will have a secure passageway to the Middle East and its rich oil reserves to fuel their mechanized army.
The Brits taught the American boys in our unit everything they could about combat against the Germans. Now it's time to see if I've learned enough.
The code name for the invasion is Torch. The plan is to land 65,000 British and American troops in the French colonies of Morocco and Algeria. The goal is to trap the Germans between the Anglo-American invasion armies and the British Eighth Army, which has been chasing the Germans across North Africa toward Tunisia. Operation Torch has been a total surprise. The Allies put 33,000 troops ashore near Algiers, including Charles Scheffel's unit.
Everything is a disorganized mess. I have no map and no specific orders except to clear the dock and engage any opposition that we might encounter. I think the Brits just want us out of their hair.
While Scheffel and the rest of the American forces are relegated to rear positions, British and American armored divisions push forward. Within weeks, they are only about 20 miles from Tunis, the Germans' chief port and main supply city. But before the British can launch a decisive attack on the city, German forces mount a furious assault, stopping the British in their tracks. Behind the lines, Charles Scheffel grows impatient with his British superiors.
I'm ready to get into action, but we keep getting all the crap jobs because the Brits don't seem to trust us much. I want to rejoin the American Army. I am fed up, and after a heated exchange with my British brigadier, we're told to just take off. Well, goddamn, he won't have to say that twice. I round up my men, and we head out to find the 9th.
Kasserine Pass in Tunisia, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel's elite Africa Corps lashes out at the American forces. The Americans are caught unprepared and are quickly overwhelmed. They sustain more than 6,000 casualties before finally regrouping and halting the Germans. The American military command swiftly relieves the officer responsible for the Kasserine fiasco and replaces him with the highly decorated and aggressive Lieutenant General George S. Patton. In early March of 1943, the British 8th Army pushes north into Tunisia, while the Americans hammer at the Germans' western flank. In the mountains near El Guitar, American artillery and infantry units, including Scheffel's 39th Regiment, push back a furious German counteroffensive. For the first time, U.S. forces defeat the seasoned German armored units in battle. With no hope of holding their lines, the Germans begin to retreat northward to the ports of Tunis and Bizerta. The now battle-tested Charles Scheffel and the 39th Regiment pursue the enemy along the dusty ridges in northern Tunisia. They hope to catch the retreating Germans before the enemy can dig in.
We're moving along when we stumble on this group of Germans. They have their hands in the air, and they're yelling, "Comrade, comrade." They're just young enlisted men, filthy and scared, and they don't seem like much trouble, so one guy with an automatic rifle and a full clip ought to be enough to guard them. So I call over Kyle Berger and I tell him he's gonna have to take him back to Battalion HQ alone. Kyle Berger comes walking back, and I realize what just happened. He murdered those prisoners.
I put my hand on my gun. I was ready to shoot him. And one of my men said, "Sir, you don't know this, but he's a Jew."
He tells me his parents were killed by Nazis back in Germany. What am I gonna do, send him back to HQ under arrest? Our orders are to push on toward Bizerta, and I need every last man I can get. So we push on. We can see our planes dropping tons of bombs on the Germans. All I can think is give them hell, guys.
After pursuing the enemy across northern Tunisia, Lieutenant Charles Scheffel and the 39th Infantry Regiment are closing in on the port city of Bizerta. Allied air power is destroying the German supply lines to Italy and any hope of escape.
It's crazy and exhilarating, cheering at the death of our enemies.
After a week of relentless attacks from the air and ground, the last vestige of the Nazis' hold on North Africa is crushed.
About mid-morning, a long column of vehicles comes up the road. Strung out behind, there must be 50,000 German soldiers. This is what's left of the invincible Germans.
On May 7th, 1943, British troops march into the capital of Tunis, while American forces enter the city of Bizerta. Five months after launching the Operation Torch landings, the Allies have pushed the Germans out of the continent, and the inexperienced Americans have proven themselves in their first major campaign against the Nazis.
There's joy in victory, knowing that we did what we came to do, that I led my men into and out of combat. But this was just one battle. And one battle ain't gonna win this war.
This generation of Americans has come to realize with a present and personal realization that there is something larger and more important than the life of any individual or of any individual group. Something for which a man will sacrifice and gladly sacrifice not only his pleasures, not only his goods, not only his associations with those he loves, but his life itself.
By early 1943, the number of American casualties in all theaters of war reaches more than 65,000.
We, not they, will win the final battle, and we, not they, will make the final peace. The harder the sacrifice, the more glorious the triumph.